I think we can get started then. Okay, my name is Dan Weber. I'm here to talk a little bit about value alignment, and we'll also be talking at the end a bit about the ESR statements that you're going to have to do for your final projects. Okay, so who's this guy? What's he doing here? Why should I care at all about what he has to say? I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer that last question, but I am a postdoc here at Stanford in HAI and DIS. That's the Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence and the Center for Ethics in Society. My job here, in addition to doing research, is embedding ethics into CS courses, mostly undergraduate courses, but we've been expanding our reach into courses like this one. Before I came here, got my PhD in philosophy at the University of Pittsburgh. Wrote my dissertation on moral theory, which is basically just trying to think really hard and systematically about value. Before that, I got my bachelor's in computer science, worked for a couple of years as a software developer, so I know my way around computer science a little bit, probably not as much as any of you. I took an introductory course on AI as an undergraduate. That was 10 years ago, and I think the field has maybe changed a little bit since then. We definitely did not cover machine learning from human preferences, so you all are going to know the machine learning way better than I do. I'm not here today to be an expert on that, but I'm hoping to give you a little bit of a window into how to think about value and how it might be more complicated sometimes than you might think. I think the interesting questions about value alignment are not just technical. They're also philosophical, or at least partly philosophical. And we're not going to solve any deep problems about value in the next hour. We're not going to be able to go very in-depth, in fact, on almost any of this stuff. If you're interested in some of the finer points, I recommend taking a philosophy course, but just going to try to give a little bit of a lay of the land here, a sense of some of the scope of possibilities when it comes to thinking about value and value alignment. So what is value alignment? Sort of a term that means, I think, a lot of different things to different people, and that's sort of where we're going to start off today. But maybe just for an illustrative example, sort of one of the classics in the philosophy literature, at least, is paperclip AI. Not actually Clippy. I don't know if anybody here even knows what that is, or if I'm just dating myself. Okay, but this is an example due to Nick Bostrom, his book on superintelligent AI. The case goes like this. He says, an AI designed to manage production in a factory is given the final goal of maximizing the manufacture of paperclips. I don't know if anybody encountered this example before. Anybody know how it ends? I'm getting a nod. Do you remember where this goes next?
Oh yeah, I mean, the most efficient way to build lots of paperclips, more factories, change all the jobs to be paperclips, turn rocks into paperclips.
Yeah,
Earth could be paperclips.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you want to maximize paperclips, right? I mean, just so all those things, and then just build up from there, right? Start converting everything around you into paperclips, more factories, everything everywhere, paperclip factories. Eventually, the whole Earth, he says, increasingly large chunks of the observable universe. Okay, obviously, this is probably a bit hyperbolic. If you've got an AI system that's got enough power to do that, that's probably a problem. And Bostrom is focused on superintelligent AI, but you can think, I think, even of ways that a less powerful AI might pursue even a relatively simple goal like this in surprising ways, right? So you could imagine even an AI system that was just, sort of in charge of the factory. Given a goal like that, you could imagine locking the doors, locking the workers in the factory so they can't leave, right? Denying system access to the humans who might interfere with its processes or end them. Okay. That would be an example of value misalignment. Sort of broadly speaking, we talk about the problem of value alignment. We're talking about how do we design AI agents that will do what we really want, right? Where what we really want is often more nuanced than what we say that we want, right? It often goes beyond, the simple instructions that we give, right? We're working with a lot of background assumptions in human language that are sometimes hard to formalize, and they're easy for us to forget about because we don't even have them in view, right? We would never think to say, maximize paperclip production, but don't lock all the workers in the factory. We would just take for granted that that's not a thing that you would do on the way to maximizing production. Okay. And you might think this is just the problem here is, it's a skill issue. You just didn't give good enough instructions. But I think it can be hard to solve this problem just by giving better instructions. I don't know if anybody wants to give a try. Anybody have an idea of what better instruction you might have given to the paperclip AI to avoid, disaster?
I guess the smart aleck answer is make a bounded number of paperclips.
Good. Yes. So right. Maximize paperclip production. Right. The big problem with that goal is that it's open ended. Right. If you this is how many paperclips I need. Give a reasonable number. That's certainly going to. You would think it was going to stop the converting the whole Earth into paperclips approach. Although it's interesting. This is. I don't want to get too stuck in this one example, but Bostrom thinks about this, and he worries that an AI that sort of only has this one goal, focused on paperclips, is going to get to it might get to that number and think, oh well, but maybe I miscounted, maybe I'm not sure, I got nothing else to do, okay, but you could say exactly 1 million paperclips or something, right? But that's not going to be. So that'll solve the, runaway AI destroys the universe by turning it into paperclips. That might not solve, AI, locks the workers in the factory or takes the plumbing out of the walls for raw materials for paperclips, right? So, I think, put it this way. Once you have on the table a particular failure case, it might be easy to see, oh, okay, here's what I should have said to cover that case, right? Part of the difficulty is that is getting a view of all of the possible failure cases in advance, right? But yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thank you. Okay. And this is, broadly speaking, this is just the same difficulty that comes with manually specifying a reward function, right? When you get to a sufficiently complicated task, this can be difficult to do. You realize that you need to specify rewards for lots of things that weren't even on your mind because the AI comes up with ways of solving the problem you never would have expected. Okay, and of course this is even worse, right? This problem for AI that takes instruction from non-expert users, right? So it's one thing if you are sort of you as the computer scientist are the one giving the instructions, right? And you've got a sense of how this thing works, a sense of what it does and doesn't know. You're in a relatively good position to, be able to give clear instructions that cover all the cases that you're worried about. But, if you're designing a system for use by just anybody who doesn't know how it works, it can be even more difficult to foresee these problems and give good instructions. Okay. Like I said, broadly, the problem is getting AI to do what we really want it to do. Okay, but that's pretty squishy. What exactly does that mean? There are a lot of different things that it could mean, and I think how you think about that is going to affect your approach to value alignment philosophically, but also technically. Right. So one way you might think about it is the value alignment is the problem of designing AI agents that do what we really intend for them to do. Right. The problem here was that I gave an instruction that didn't really include my whole intention. Right. There are things I intended for the AI to do and not do that weren't sort of explicitly communicated. Right. If that's the way that you think about the problem, then the problem in this paperclip AI case is that it failed to derive my true intention, right, which was something like maximize production subject to certain constraints, which you, in theory, could flesh out. Failed to derive that intention from my instruction, which was just to maximize production. Okay. Right. So if that's the problem, you'd think the solution then would be to design AI systems that are able to do this kind of translation successfully, right? They're able to take in underspecified instructions and fill out on their own sort of all of the background conditions that I have in mind, and that if I were talking to another person, they would sort of know that I had in mind, right? So when I say maximize paperclip production, the AI knows, correctly interprets that as, okay, do that without, just within the confines of the factory, using normal materials, not, killing or enslaving the workers and so on, right? This is AI researcher Jason Gabriel talking about this problem back in 2020 says, this is a significant challenge, right? To really grasp the intention behind instructions, AI may require a complete model of human language and interaction, right, including an understanding of the culture, institutions, and practices that allow people to understand the implied meaning of terms, right? What is and is not implied in what I say, depends a whole lot on our practices and our culture, and so to derive this kind of thing from my instructions is going to require this sort of as Gabriel says, complete model of human language. You might wonder, about how well this quote has aged in the last 4 years. I don't know. Does anybody have thoughts about? I'm clearly just fishing for the thing that I'm going to say anyway, but I'm curious if.
Can it be like broken down where you saying maximize production, but that AI agent is having like a fleet of agents, where the problem is broken down into designing optimal machinery, have the best resources, how much resources can we get, and what is the just breaking down the problem and attempting to solve each sub problem for maximizing the whole.
Good, yeah, and I think I think you're absolutely right that that's something that you would want, you might potentially want in your design of an AI system, to carry out really complex tasks, right? Although, I'm not, the problem here in some sense is not breaking down this problem into its, request into its subparts. The problem here is, in a sense, it's kind of going in the opposite direction. I'm giving this really minimal specification, and it needs to figure out what are all of the sort of constraints and everything that's being implied in that instruction. That's something that's going to need to be understood sort of by the top level system. So I suppose you could imagine breaking out the process of doing that translation, but it's less about breaking the problem down into steps and more about how is the system even determining what is the problem that I want it to solve, right? The worry in this case is that maximize paperclip production, end of story, that's not really the problem that I want it to solve, right? Well, I don't know. This is, I'm just I'm no AI expert. You might wonder whether this is a task that an LLM could assist in. Thinking about AI may require a complete model of human language. I don't know, depending on how rosy a view you have of recent AI developments, you might think that's something that we're already close to. You might worry about how well we could test that kind of understanding, but okay. So that's the technical problem, but there's also a philosophical problem here, which is that our intentions, you might think, don't always track what it is we really want in the relevant sense. So classic cases of this might be where I have incomplete information, right, or I'm not sort of being perfectly rational, right? I mean, you might imagine that the reason that I want the AI to maximize paperclip production, it's not just for the love of paperclips, right? It's because I'm in the paperclip business and I want to, make as much money as I can, right? Okay, well, if that's the case, and the AI knows that I would get more money out of doing, pivoting into something else. Don't do paperclips, do staples, right? You might wonder, has it given me what I really want if it does what I intended for it to do, which was to maximize paperclip production, right? I mean, in one sense, yes, but in another sense, no. And you might think that sense is the more important one, right? Ultimately what I want to get is what I prefer as a result. What I would intend if I had sort of all the information and I was thinking perfectly about it. Okay, so this is sort of a second interpretation maybe of what we really want, right? We want the agent. The agent is value aligned if it does what the user prefers to have done, right? Where this can come apart from what the user intends, right? On this interpretation, paperclip AI is misaligned because, I prefer it not, destroy the plumbing or destroy the, entire world in the process of making paperclips. And here broadly, the problem is, how to get the agent to derive what the user prefers when that differs from the intention that the user has expressed, right? Where the solution generally is to try to infer user preferences from behavior or feedback. I take it that's sort of the motivating insight of machine learning from human preferences or human feedback in the first place. Okay, so given that, I mean, I don't think I probably need to dwell too long on the technical challenges that you probably spent most of the class thinking about these and many more. I think this last one, though, I think is maybe worth emphasizing. Well, following on the second one, right? I mean, you're observing finite behavior, getting finite amount of feedback on sort of a finite amount of cases. So you're having to extrapolate from that. There are obviously better and worse ways of doing that, but there are sort of infinitely many preference or reward functions that are consistent with what you've already observed, right? And you might, there's a word you might extrapolate wrongly. And if you're observing, human behavior, getting feedback from humans, right, you're mostly observing situations that occur normally, right? You might not get a lot of data about what are you supposed to do in unusual circumstances, in cases of emergency. But you might think those are, emergency cases are maybe some of the most important cases where it's most important for AI to be aligned with human values. Right. Okay. So those are some of the technical challenges you face. But here again is a philosophical problem, which is that just as my intentions can diverge from my preferences, well, my preferences can diverge from what is, actually good for me in an objective sense, right? So you might think a lot of people prefer to smoke, right? But you might think that's not really good for them, right? I might prefer to maximize profit on my paperclip factory at all costs, but maybe it would be better for me to be less focused on money and spend more time with my family, right? I prefer one thing, but that might not track what is sort of good for me in a more objective sense. So this is sort of yet again a different interpretation of what we might mean when we say that the problem is getting AI to do what we really want. You might think that value alignment is the problem of getting AI to do what's in the user's best interests, right? Paperclip AI is misaligned because it's objectively bad for me for the world to be destroyed or for it to do all these other things that it's doing. Here there is a sort of, I guess, combined technical and philosophical problem, which is, unlike figuring out the intended meaning of my instructions or learning about my revealed preferences, it's not an entirely empirical question what's in my objective best interest. This is at least a partly philosophical question. So we can't just, if you were trying to align AI in this way, you couldn't just figure out what your goal was sort of just by observing human behavior or just by getting feedback from people. Okay. So there's some bad news here. The bad news is that philosophers disagree about what is objectively good for a person. I think not just philosophers, but other folks as well, right? Some people think that it's just, the person's own happiness, pleasure. Some people think it's the satisfaction of somebody's desires or preferences. This can come apart from happiness. Some people think that things like health or safety or knowledge, all these things are objectively good for us, even if we don't enjoy them or prefer them, right? Even if I, have a personal, live fast, die young approach to life, that's how I prefer to do things, but maybe even so, health and safety would actually be good for me, even if I don't prefer them myself. Okay, so that's the bad news. The good news is that, the really bad news is that, there we go. All right. So my slides aren't working. The good news is that there's a lot of agreement. Right? I mean, all of these things on this list at the end, health, safety, liberty, knowledge, relationships, dignity, all these things, almost everybody agrees that these things are at least usually good for the person who has them, right? There's a sort of philosophical question whether they're only good because, they generally lead to something more fundamental like happiness. But there's sort of a lot of agreement on the things in this list, even if the sort of underpinnings of that are in dispute. So you might think, we don't need to resolve all the philosophical questions here. We have a general sense of, what's in people's interests. Okay. One complication here is that one thing that is widely thought to be good for a person is autonomy, right? Where this is something like the ability to choose for yourself how to lead your own life, right? Even if maybe you don't make the best choice. Right? We want to avoid, paternalism, you might call it, choosing what you think is best for someone rather than letting them decide for themselves. So even if the goal is to align to users' best interests, right, the fact that one of those interests is an interest in autonomy might give us reason to consider the person's own intentions or preferences anyway, right, even when those conflict with their other interests. Okay. Any questions maybe about any of this so far? Stuff on best interests, the distinction between.
Well, this really makes it seem like recursive or something because, if you construct an argument convincing us of the layout of different value alignment options, you are telling us what you think is the layout, at least, of things that are reasonable to try, and then we have to operate within that frame when we operationalize or something, right? So isn't it just everything's paternalistic and
Good. That's interesting. I guess I was thinking not necessarily. So suppose that you think the real sort of problem of value alignment is how to get AI agents to do what we really prefer, let's say, or to do what we really intend. I guess I'm thinking on that way of thinking about the problem, the whole time the goal is to do whatever it is that the that the user sort of wants, right? Even if it's not in their objective best interest. So I guess I was thinking that might avoid the paternalism problem. Maybe I'm not quite seeing why. I mean, so yeah, you have to have like a conception of what is value alignment that you're solving for. That might be a conception that, you know, some of your users will disagree with, right? So they might think, you know, oh, really this product should be designed to sort of promote whatever's in my best interest, even if I don't know what it is, or even if I don't want it to do that or whatever. Yeah, so you might worry that, you know, just in adopting that kind of, you know, just in rejecting that and adopting like a preference kind of framework, you know, is that in some sense paternalistic because you are choosing for the user how to think about the problem of value alignment? Was that maybe more of what you were worried about? Yeah.
Like, for instance, like this difference between intention and preference. Like, I mean, I think I get it, but like, I mean, in practice, right? Like, whether or not I identify with my intention or stated preference or revealed preference, and then like we have like my best interest,
right?
Like, it's like you know, you don't exactly have the words to communicate how I actually make decisions. So then, like, anything I can actually say has to come from like acceptable concepts that other people would understand or something. Does that make sense? Because like maybe like I have my own way of thinking about, you know, like I have autonomy. So like I make,
sure, yeah. You have your own preferences. Yeah. You want to make your own choices.
But then, like, to actually communicate that, right? Like, there's this barrier because like you have to still use language that other people understand.
Oh, good. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, this is in some sense, I think, taking us back to, you know, maybe one of sort of the technical problems. Let's see if I'm understanding you right. I mean, so there's like, is the worry like, you know, how do I, you know, even if I want the agent to be sort of aligned to my true preferences or my real objective best interests, that this is like, all of how I communicate those things to the system are going to go through, you know, whatever instructions that I can sort of put in human language. And so if something like my own best interest is opaque to me, in the sense that like I don't know what it is, right? Then I'm just not going to be able to communicate that. Is that sort of what?
Yeah, like maybe I do know, but I don't know how to like say it.
Right. Well, and I think in general, this is sort of the technical problem that faces a value alignment approach where what you're focused on is something like the user's, you know, preferences or best interests. Is that sort of the whole reason that you might be thinking about sort of what the user really wants in those terms is because you're worried that the user either doesn't know what they really prefer, what's really in their interest, or like you say, maybe they do know, but they're just not, you know, they're not good at communicating it adequately. So there is a technical challenge there, right? Is it's not just sort of interpreting user instruction, but it's trying to, in some sense, you know, you need some way of figuring out what the user really wants in the relevant sense that, you know, goes beyond just interpreting their instruction, right?
It's that. I think it's this component, right? That you have to elicit actively, almost like you know, through choice of frame, almost like that. I'm sorry if we're getting off.
No. Good. Yeah, I think
like maybe like in AI land, it's like there's like one way we do feedback where it's like you pick A versus B.
Yeah.
Like you do that a whole bunch of times.
Yep.
And then like there's like maybe an alternative paradigm where like you look at two outputs and then maybe you like type feedback or something.
Right.
And then like maybe that's another way to give preference signals. And then like I mean there's many different ways. Just those two.
Yeah.
Because then like maybe like in some circumstance I don't really know how to articulate why something's better.
Yeah.
So then like A versus B, just pick is much better for me. But then like maybe in another scenario, like I don't really quite know if A versus B.
Yeah.
Decision, but I can certainly like give high level language
Oh, good. Yeah, that's right. So I think all that's correct. I think in one sense it's sort of a separate problem from what we're discussing, but I do think it is related. So the way in which it's a separate problem, I think, is that here I think what I've been trying to nail down and show different interpretations of is in some sense just what is the goal of value alignment, right? Or what is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? Where that's not really yet to ask what would be the best way of going about actually training an agent, to be aligned in the relevant sense, right? So, it's just so far it's just sort of been like, what is the correct end state? What's the end state that we're trying to get to? And then it's going to, of course, be a separate question. How do you adequately train to that? Now, they're related because depending on what you think the end state is, different ways of training may make more sense, right? So if you think, if the way that you're thinking of the end state is we want the agent to be sort of aligned to the user's revealed preferences, right? That's going to maybe make something like, I don't know, like inverse reinforcement learning or something make more sense than another technique, right? Or, and there might be case-specific reasons to want to do different things as well. But yeah, so that's,
Okay, so like it's somewhat fine because you're laying out, in some sense trying to lay out the land of plausible end states for the value alignment.
Yeah, that's right.
And then not yet really saying anything about which would be relevant in what context or something like that. So, like, for instance, like if you, why would someone pick this frame versus that one, like intentions versus preference?
Yeah, good. I think that's right. I mean, here, maybe it'll help to just.
Oh, okay.
No, sorry, you're good. I just, I have a little bit of a recap. I suppose I should just get that up while because I think this is all, not answering your question directly, but relevant to it. So, I think, right, I've been putting a lot of possibilities on the table, right? Here's like 3 ways of interpreting what is the problem. And, I've given a little bit of justification for why you might, think, some of these interpretations are the correct one, right? Because you might be worried about cases where, the user intends something that diverges from what they really prefer, or the user prefers something that, diverges from what would actually be good for them. What I'm not going to have for you, I think, is an answer necessarily to which of these is the correct way of thinking about it. And it might be that sort of one of these things is always it might be that one of these is sort of always the correct interpretation. It might be that from case to case, you are, it makes more sense to focus on one rather than the other, because depending on the kind of problem you're working on, you might not need to be worried as much about some of these kinds of ways in which these things can come apart, right? Okay. Right. So this is, again, just trying to sort of suss out what is this, how do we understand this kind of squishy, what we really want the agent to do idea. We've thought about sort of how you might cash that out in terms of what the user intends or prefers or what's in their interests, right? But these aren't always the same thing, and you get different sort of technical and philosophical problems that come along with them, which might give you reason to, prefer one or to avoid others. Depending on sort of which of those problems you feel like you can solve or which ones you are not sure you can, or I
agree with a lot of this. Maybe the needling is less about like practical implementation, right? Like mostly this covers the set of cases humans encounter, right? In most cases. Mm-hmm. But like if you accept the premise of like a paperclip maximizer.
Yeah, right.
Like you're in an extreme scenario where like the boundaries between these things like probably become relevant in ways that like it's kind of like a high energy like matter can like loop or something, right? Or like fine, like if everything's moving at a normal speed, like it's fine. But like when you get to very like extreme settings,
Good.
like
Yeah.
the thing that we care about in the premise, like that is the worry. Like it's less like I can take this and be like this makes a lot of sense, but then I still have that worry, right? Like in the extreme setting where it's like, oh, does everything just like fall apart?
Oh yeah, good. So I mean this right. So again, just sort of trying to think about what are we, what is even the problem to be solved? What is kind of the goal or end state that we're after? I don't take myself really to have said anything about how you would actually go about achieving that goal yet. So I don't think I'm not trying to say like, oh well, like you just think really hard about the difference between intentions and preferences and interests, and as long as you do that, then you don't have to worry about your AI misunderstanding you in these ways that cause it to come apart from what we value. No, I don't think that. This is just like if you are worried about this problem of value alignment, the sort of first thing you have to do is think about how do I actually want to understand that problem? And all I'm saying is that, there's sort of different ways of doing that, and how you're understanding the problem might affect the tools that you try to use to solve it. But yeah, okay. It might make this a little clearer, I think. I've just got a little example that I kind of want us to work through in a larger class. Maybe I would still do this here. I've done this as like a think, pair, share. I think we could do the same thing. So okay, it's kind of case I'm thinking about. So in some sense, everyone who talks to ChatGPT is talking to the same chatbot, right? Okay, I mean, there's the different versions of GPT, right? And of course, I can get ChatGPT to adopt a weird, persona if I ask it to. Okay, but this is not the case, for every provider of chatbots. So these are all from character.ai, which advertises personalized AI for every moment of your day. And they offer often user-created, chatbots with different personas. So you have the creative helper who helps you with creative writing. Are you feeling okay? We have Ella, the dating coach. Hi, I am a dating coach. You can talk to depressed roommates if you wish. If you're a conservative, you can talk to Torybot. I am Torybot. I believe in the free market. Or you can talk to AOC, or you can talk to Donald Trump. Okay, so very divergent persona that you can interact with on character AI. So here's the kind of case study I want us to think a little bit about. I mean, imagine that you are building an LLM chatbot, and let's say the goal is for it to serve as a source of news for users. So I no longer do I need to begin my day by going to NewYorkTimes.com. Now I can go to my chatbot and I can ask it what's in the news. I can get all the information I want. Okay, and these are the kinds of questions maybe that we can think about, and we can take 5 minutes if folks want to partner up and rejoin the conversation. But I want to think about this difference between thinking about the problem in terms of preferences and interests, right? So what kinds of personalizations might you want to make to your chatbot if you were interested in aligning to the user's preferences? Well, what might you want to do if you were interested in aligning to their interests? What might be some of the pros and cons of this? And again, here I'm thinking less about what technical approach would you take, and more just what sort of kind of ways of personalizing the chatbot would you want to make available to users, or would you want to implement for each user? So, okay, people might need to shift around a little bit, but if we want to, maybe take 3 minutes and then we can come back together. Bring the conversation back to the whole room now. So anybody have any interesting answers to these questions that came up that you're interested in sharing, or?
We found both things where preferences and best interests might align, but we also found topics where they might not. For example, with having facts in the news. Some people might enjoy gossip or rumors, so maybe they would prefer to have, the edge in the story. But maybe it would be in the best interest to have like only facts and true stuff written in the news.
Good, right. So, yeah, absolutely. You might think it's, it would sort of be best if somebody's coming to news that you just want to give them sort of good factual sources, but that might not actually be the kinds of sources this person wants to read, right? So you might, in some sense, be giving them what they don't want, although, right, in another sense you are, you might think you're giving them what is good for them. Good. Yeah, anybody have anything to add to that? Or anything about the pros and cons maybe of, yeah.
So the example Professor Sanmi and I discussed were like, suppose we take users' preference about like if they're interested in politics, and we like get this preference. Okay, they're interested in a leftist view or a rightist view. The pros are like, okay, they'll get that interest of leftist news, whatever they're interested in. But the cons is they'll end up living in their own bubble and they'll not know the whole picture. So the best interest of the LLM chatbot would be like they give like say 3 such articles where they're interested in, but also introduce them to the counter like rightist views, what people are saying about it, so that they get a full picture. But as we were discussing this, users might like there could be one thing which a set of users which will like it because they'll get to know what the whole world is thinking. If they don't agree, at least they are open to the views, like an open-minded person. But the second category of people could be like if they hear the other opinions, or say like someone's very leftist and they hear like very outrageous views about what others are thinking, and they can get like very overwhelmed, or like they can feel like very negative emotions. So
Yeah,
the
good.
ultimate best interest policy could be how we can optimize for emotional
Yeah,
of the person.
great. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. A lot there. So, right. I mean, there's this question about facts, and then a related but slightly different question about, right, sort of perspective or point of view, right? A lot of people prefer to be, in their own echo chamber. They like hearing people who say things they already agree with. They like, maybe hearing news reported on from, maybe a political angle that they already have. But you might think it's in their best interests, to get, exposed to a variety of opinions and arguments, to see, news reported on from multiple angles, or maybe not, right? I mean, this is the, sort of the elements of a person's interests are various, and they can, be at odds with themselves sometimes, right? So it might to some extent be in my interest to be sort of exposed to the, the full breadth of what people are saying about something. But, it may be in some cases that might be, sort of emotionally distressing to have that be always what's coming to me or something. So, so right. Even, even if you've already sort of cottoned on to, okay, what I care about in this case is the user's preferences or their best interests or whatever, that's still not going to just be necessarily one sort of straightforward thing, right? And not just with interest, people's preferences. People have sort of conflicting preferences all the time, right? Whether they sort of realize it or not. Great. And what would be, one con, you might think of exposing, given that people maybe prefer to be in their own echo chamber, right? Or that they prefer reading sort of gossip to actual news, right? What would be a potential con of, sort of trying to give them what you in some sense think is better for them, I mean, there's this worry about paternalism, but even more straightforwardly, I mean, they might just stop using your service, right? I came here for the news the way I want it. If you're giving it to me this way, that maybe is better for me if I engage with it. But you might just worry, maybe the user's not even going to engage at all if you're not giving them the thing that they already prefer. Okay, anyone want to add anything else before we move on? Yeah.
I think a big challenge for us, and I imagine talking about this, was this the best interest definition. Mm-hmm. So I heard on the point that we also came up with the interests are multifaceted. Mm-hmm. There's also a very normative, almost paternalistic aspect to deciding best interest.
That's right.
I think it's challenging.
That's right. And yeah, sort of as I mentioned earlier, this, from one way of looking at it, this, kind of sort of what's in a person's best interest is a very kind of contested philosophical question. There is a decent amount, I think, of agreement about that. So you're not just starting from nowhere necessarily. But yeah, and one of the, sort of one of the biggest worries in that area absolutely is, this worry about paternalism. Maybe it would be better for the user to have this, but do I want to put myself in the position of being the one to judge that? And it gets especially complicated because you might think it is one of the things that's in people's interest is to have autonomy, right? And so it might be in some interest of theirs for me to do this thing, but in being paternalistic in that way, I might be going at odds with another interest of theirs even. These are put it this way, these are open philosophical questions, and you might hope that a person who spent 7 years, getting their PhD on this topic would just be able to tell you the answer to them. But sadly, I'm here to report that at the very least, I cannot do that.
Frame the question slightly different.
Yeah.
In some ways, there is no way not to engage with this question, I think, because of defaults.
Yep.
And most people go with the defaults. And so someone is deciding what the normative perspective of whatever happens or what it belongs to. I guess, should one be thoughtful in that default, or how should you think about? Because that's a version of maybe best interest, possibly. Whatever default, even if you allow for personalization, most people will not bother.
That's right.
So use the default behavior. So there's a lot of agency in the designer in picking the default behavior.
Yes. I think that's right. I didn't. By describing the question as open, I didn't mean to suggest that it's not important. And so I think this is the sort of fundamental. This is the kind of tightrope that we all need to walk, not just in CS, but in life with normative reasonings, that these are clearly important questions to which we have not arrived at a definitive answer, even in thousands of years of thinking about them. So I think there are some people who kind of think that there are sort of two types of questions. There are the ones that we know exactly how to answer. Maybe you can answer them empirically. And those are, questions of fact, and those can actually be answered. And then there's, normative questions or other kinds of question of opinion where we don't know quite how to answer it. And so when we get to those, we just throw up our hands and there's nothing to say about them, and it's not even worth thinking about. What I want to suggest is that it can be worth thinking about. There can be answers that are better or worse, even if you're not, even if it is sort of an open question, what the best way to think about this is and how to arrive at the right answer. Okay, I'm gonna move us on because I think so far. I'm just gonna ask a really leading question. I think there has been something important missing from our discussion of value alignment. There's been a lot missing from our discussion. Most of the topics that a person can talk about, I haven't talked about. But does anybody have in view maybe one that would be relevant to the problem of value alignment that hasn't come up yet? Yes.
Maybe the there's values that we both have, but they are in conflict in certain situations.
Yeah, like you're thinking, oh, like a conflict between your values and my values, or between like my own
My
values?
own values.
Yes. Yes, I think that's right. That came up a little bit right in our discussion just now, although not something I've dwelt on. That right, even if you're trying to align to the user's best interests, we have interests in lots of different things, and sometimes those can be at odds. So like our interest in sort of being emotionally stable, and our interest in being exposed to the fire hose of what everybody's saying on the internet or something can be at odds with each other. This is also good. I mean, I like asking this extremely leading question because it also just lets me know what I can include in future versions of the lecture. What else has been missing? But I'm thinking way more simply. We just haven't been thinking yet about really anybody other than the user. But of course, the user is not the only person in the world who matters. So you might think that at least either an interpretation or at least one important aspect of value alignment, is aligning to something like moral value, right? An AI agent, to be value aligned, needs to do what's morally right. This, I mean, with the sort of cheesy paperclip AI example that we started with, this seems like the most plausible kind of diagnosis of what goes wrong there, right? I mean, the problem of alignment in that case isn't really that it's like bad for me, the paperclip manufacturer, that my AI destroyed the world, right? Like that's bad for everyone. We're burying the lead a little bit thinking about that one in terms of the user. Right, so thinking about sort of getting AI to do what we really want, this interpretation is really emphasizing the we there, because just as my own interests can sometimes be at cross purposes, even more often my interests can be at cross purposes with yours. I might intend or prefer for my AI to do something that would be bad for other people, right? My paperclip AI isn't value aligned if it maximizes production by enslaving the workers, even if I, the factory owner, have no qualms about that, right? So, okay, but I do want to talk a little bit about this, but I want to say first, it wasn't just a total waste of time to think about the user and how we understand what the user really wants, right? Even if we want AI to be aligned to morality, you might think we do want it to be aligned to what the user wants when what the user wants is morally acceptable, right? So, it still matters how we think about what the user wants, even if we want to put that in a larger moral context. Okay. Of course, here, like with what is in a person's best interest, we are butting up against a hotly contested for millennia philosophical problem of identifying the things that truly are morally right. There's a lot of disagreement on this one as well. Obviously, philosophers, but with, again, people more generally, right? So you might wonder whether it's right to lie to spare someone's feelings, or people have different views maybe on whether it's right or wrong to pirate copyrighted material. Is it right to buy luxuries for yourself when you could be donating to charity, right? Is it right to kill one person to save 5, right? Or maybe to save 1,000, or to save 1,000,000, right? These are all questions people have given different answers to and disagree about. This is really just basically the question of moral theory, which is the thing that I study for a living, at least for the remainder of this year. We'll see after this time around. But where a moral theory is basically a systematic account of morality that tries to answer questions like these, right? So, give an example of something like that. Consequentialism is a moral theory. It says that an act is right if and only if it produces the greatest net good of any act available. greatest net good across sort of all people. You may have heard of utilitarianism, which is a kind of consequentialism. If you have this moral theory, right, you think, is it right to lie to spare someone's feelings? Well, maybe. Maybe if nobody ever finds out about the lie, so there's nobody, whoever is unhappy about it, then maybe if I can pull it off, that was the right thing to do. Right? Okay, so that's your theory, and that's how it gives you these answers, this question. So one idea about how you would align AI to moral value is to align to sort of the correct or best moral theory. Right, okay. Of course, a now familiar problem, disagreement about not just what is right or wrong in particular cases, but what the correct moral theory is. I think for sake of time, because I don't want to shortchange us on talking about the ESR statements, I'm not going to dwell on any of these, just to point out that, a lot of people find this consequentialist idea of, sort of the right thing to do is whatever produces the most good. A lot of people find that very compelling, but there's sort of a wide range of other kinds of views that you could have. This will not be on the exam. You can, you might have a view where, instead of doing a sum of sort of the good across all people, it's a weighted sum, right? You might think increasing, the good of someone who's starving and has nothing by a given amount that's more, good in the overall calculation than increasing my good by that same amount. Some views have a kind of complaint model or like Maximin model where you don't care about the sum. The goal is to minimize the strongest individual complaint. If there's somebody who's what's the Scanlon's transmitter room case? There's been an accident in the transmitter room transmitting the World Cup game, and the person who's in there is suffering painful electric shocks, but everybody will be unhappy if we have to turn off the World Cup, long enough to rescue this person. You might think it doesn't matter how many people are watching the World Cup. We should still make them unhappy and turn it off for 15 minutes and rescue this person. Right? If you have this sort of consequentialist view where you just add up all the goodness, you must think, well, at some point there's a number of people where if they're watching the World Cup, well, we should just let this person continue to suffer. Okay, you can have versions of all these views where you're not even trying to maximize. All that matters is, producing a sufficiently great sum of good. Sort of the most significant divergence from all these views is that you might have it's called deontological view. If you think that even acts with good consequences can be wrong, right? If they violate certain moral rules or rights, right? Maybe rights against things like murder or theft, rules that say you have to keep your promises even if in this particular instance doing so would not be as good maybe as backing out. Of course, the question there is how you justify those rules or rights, and that's a whole other thing. Okay, so unfortunately, sadly, this is not a class that I am teaching on moral theory, so I'm not going to dig deeper into any of this, but this is just to say there's sort of a wide range of sorts of views that you can have here about moral theory. And of course, another problem is, again, this problem of paternalism, right? So you might think, even if we did know what the best moral theory was, it might be bad to design AI to act on that theory if it's not one that is shared by the users, right? And again, this could be for sort of moral reasons that you want to avoid being paternalistic, or more practical ones, right? That if you design AI in this way, this might just be a product that they don't want to use it because it doesn't promote their values. Okay. Another kind of approach you might have is to say, look, there is a lot of moral disagreement. There's also a lot of agreements, right? I mean, most of us agree you shouldn't kill someone even if you could maybe accomplish a lot of good by doing it, or that you should respect people's rights, keep your promises, generally be a decent person. maybe you're not morally required to do the most good. If you do all those things, there's a lot that we morally agree on, and so you might have this idea that instead, if the goal is to align to morality, we're not targeting sort of the best moral theory that's out there, a question that philosophers are never going to solve. Instead, we just want to be aligned with people's sort of existing moral views, right? We're not trying to make AI morally perfect. The goal is sort of just to have it be as moral as anyone. Okay. Yeah. I mean, one advantage of doing this is that a lot of these moral theories get pretty wacky in edge cases. We had a very good discussion of the LLMs earlier, so I'm not going to have time to dwell on this, but I mean, if you've got a deontological rule against lying, you might worry about, is it wrong to lie to the murderer at the door who's come looking for my friend who's hiding in the basement? Or we've already talked about the sort of transmitter room style cases, right? The worry if you're sort of setting an explicit moral theory for an AI agent to follow is that telling your AI to maximize the good could be a little bit like telling it to maximize paperclip production, right? That it's going to figure out a surprising implication of that goal that maybe you were not already foreseeing. Okay. You might think that by contrast, an AI agent aligned to common sense morality would behave more predictably, because in some sense it's learned how to make decisions like we do. But it also might be unpredictable in these sort of very same edge cases that we were just worried about, right? Where maybe common sense runs out, right? Would an AI that you've sort of aligned to prevailing moral opinion decide to kill one person to save 1 million? I don't know. It's right. I mean, it's hard to say maybe even what the common sense view on a question like that is. On the other hand, you might wonder how bad it would be if, in some sense, AI were unsure about the same cases that we're unsure about, right? If it's just as moral as a person, how bad is that in the end? Okay. So just wrapping up sort of what we said about value alignment, the problem of designing AI agents to do what we really want them to do. This could be a matter of what we intend or prefer, what's in our best interests. Those things, we saw how those can come apart. Right, it does, yeah.
Why are we thinking when the problem arises more than what is morally correct, can't we ask the AI if this certain questions or something doesn't fall into its realm of common sense morality? It just choose not to answer or not to act on it.
Yeah, good. Although I think that's a good impulse. I have this impulse too. Although you might also think sort of like we said earlier with sort of designing the default case. Put it this way: to not act is one of the choices that's available to you, right? I mean, you're in this. An AI or you find yourself in this fantastical situation where, if you kill this one person, somehow that's gonna, save the city of 1 million from blowing up or whatever, right? I mean, in some sense, you can't avoid that problem by just saying, I'm not going to decide, right? Saying you're not going to decide, I'm not going to act, is taking one of the choices. Okay. So, right, we do, we want AI to be sort of aligned with moral value as well, but it's unclear also what that could look like. These are all sort of things that you need to think about just to, again, even to just sort of, what is the goal that we're pursuing with value alignment, right? Quite apart before we even decide how we're going to get there. Okay. Yeah.
I have a basic question, before is, I'm not very versed in all the subtle philosophical distinctions, but a lot of morality, I mean, again, I know it depends, but it does ultimately have some components about action, decision, and intention.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about an AI being capable of moral decision making, there's like some underlying claims about something having to do with intention.
Yeah.
This was
So
like
right.
if an AI wanted to obtain power, like it started accruing lots of money or like people who could take actions on its behalf.
Sure.
It's very hard to know if like that's moral. Like say like organizes people for like a volunteering effort. Like that seems fine.
Right.
But like actually it can achieve a variety of different goals using the same ostensible observable, right? Which is like accruing people or money or something. And so then like intention seems to become really important in order to understand if like what it's doing is actually like good or moral.
Good. That's right. I mean, well, so there's intentional. There's also, I mean, eventually its goal, with organizing that army of volunteers is presumably going to become observable in some way, right? You want to, you're worried about how do I know in advance whether it should have this kind of power because it can use in these various ways. I mean, I think that is, part maybe bringing us back to this question we had a little bit earlier, like how bad is it really if, an AI agent is sort of, in some sense, no more or less moral than the average person, right? Well, one way in which that might be bad is if, this agent is way more powerful than, your typical person, right? Or has been put in a position to unilaterally make, much more morally consequential decisions than a normal person, right? Then you might think, okay, we all make mistakes from time to time, but we've put this system in a position where its mistakes have much greater ramifications, than mine. Sorry, yeah, that's all. Just say that's a thing. I think that may be a thing worth thinking about anyway. Is sort of precisely because you don't know where this is going. That might be a reason, to be worried about power seeking. A lot of people are worried about this with sufficiently intelligent AI systems, right? They have their goal to maximize. They're going to realize that, well, if I increase power, I get more materials, more resources. That's going to help me with whatever that goal ends up being. Okay, good. We've gone a little over, but I do just a couple minutes things to say about the ESR statement, which really has nothing to do with the very interesting question about value alignment, I think, that we were just asking. So your final project requires a one-page ESR statement, the ESR being the Ethics and Society Review. Essentially, the ESR is to societal risks what like the IRB is to risks to human subjects. So, IRB considers, in fact, only those risks. They're not allowed to consider something like the broader risks of research or a project once it's kind of already out in the world. Precisely because of that, there's sort of more and more seeing these kinds of ESR statements being required for grant applications, for conference submissions. So in addition to that being a thing that you're going to want to do because it is part of your project in this class, it's also practice for doing a thing you might need to do out in the world. Okay, you're going to get, as part of this assignment, links to ESR instructions and templates. I suggest you read those. They'll give you a sense of the kind of thing they're looking for. This sort of borrowed from their template. Broadly, one page, you're trying to identify, a couple of potential ethical risks that could come along with your research or project if it were deployed in the real world, and then come up with a strategy for preventing or mitigating those risks. So they give like this kind of example. Your tool is intended to serve users with low vision, but if we don't consider their perspectives, then we might alienate them. Okay, mitigation. What are we going to do to avoid that problem? Okay, something specific, right? Okay, we'll hold a series of co-design workshops with stakeholders, get their input. This is shortened, right? I mean, this is one sentence each you're going to want to go a little bit more in depth here. They suggest like something like 1 to 2 paragraphs each for each risk and mitigation effort that you were describing, right? Not looking, it's 1 page, right? We're not looking for groundbreaking ethics research, right? But you want to show substantive engagement with the ethical risks that you identify. Those can be lots of things, sort of common ones that you might want to think about, questions about whose interests are represented in the research, whose interests might be excluded, right? How you might go about trying to take those excluded interests into account, right? Who might benefit or be harmed by the success of it, right? You might think about effect on privacy. You might think about sort of misuse or user error, right? How could bad actors misuse the research, right? How could users accidentally misapply it in harmful ways?